My name is Jeremy Walton, and this is the Osmo Pocket Polar Pro Speed Test. Let's go! The other day I was thinking about some YouTube videos I wanted to shoot. I have an extensive list, but it all depends on what I'm doing and where in the United States I'll be. Some of the videos are more complicated, so being on the road makes things difficult. So I wanted to do something fun. If you watched one of my more recent videos, the Osmo Pocket roller coaster review, I'll link it here, you know at that time I didn't have any ND filters. So not too long ago I picked up the Polar Pro Shutter Collection Cinema Series ND filters. I'll get into those filters shortly, but wanted to mention I also grabbed that action mount cage, which you'll see in action shortly. Now you're probably wondering, speed test, where's that coming from? Well, when I was buying the filters, you can see it states 35 mile per hour speed limit. Basically, since it's held on with a magnet, any speeds over 35 miles per hour will probably knock it loose. Well, I had to put that to the test. So I mounted my Osmo Pocket to my car, set up my GH5S to record the action, and hit the road. Something interesting happened during this test, but first, all the mounts and equipment I used for this, I have links in the description below. Also, you may have heard the Osmo Action came out not too long ago. The environment I'm putting my Osmo Pocket in will be well suited for any kind of action camera. But what about the Osmo Pocket? If you watch the YouTube channel Becki and Chris, love their content by the way. They reviewed the Osmo Pocket a while back. They attached it to the helicopter and didn't have the best results. The gimbal held up going 125 miles per hour, but it looked like the vibrations were too much. So if you're wanting to attach your Osmo Pocket to your helicopter, I don't see why you wouldn't have one, then maybe an action camera would work best. For this setup, I'm not only testing the Polar Pro magnetic strength, but let's see how well this gimbal can withstand the speed of the car. There's gotta be some tipping point between car and helicopter. Now this isn't a scientific test, but I'm sure you can make your own conclusions from it. Let me start with the acceleration test. I'm using my car for this. Earlier, I was in an SUV. I thought using different cars in different environments would weed out getting lucky if I just did this test once. So I set everything up, hit power, and got started. For the first run, I hit the gas and quickly realized I was already going 45 miles per hour. In my head, I was thinking I would start slow, but going 25 miles per hour is a simple press of the pedal. So I got a little brave and did a second run. This time I hit 55 miles per hour and the filter stayed on with the footage looking pretty good, so the gimbal was able to keep up. So far, so good. Oh, and just a side note, I'm sure you probably saw the 35 mile per hour speed limit sign. I'm not saying you should do this, I just try to find a back road with little traffic to do a couple test runs. You should also know I was filming in tilt lock mode, which I really like, especially in flashlight mode. The only reason it's upright for this video is so you can actually see the gimbal. At the end of this run, I was turning around and got an idea. Turning should also be included with speed. So I turned and turned and turned until I started feeling nauseous and realized there had to be more speed involved. This took me to the hills, and just like before, I set everything up and got started. For this run though, I'm going to speed everything up so you can really watch the gimbal at work in tilt lock mode. I couldn't go too fast, maybe 30-35 miles per hour in some spots. Throughout the windy drive uphill, the filter stayed on and the gimbal action was on point. Now let's head back down the hill in FPV mode. This is definitely a different look, especially through the sweeping turns. At times it almost feels like someone is outside the car holding the camera instead of being attached to the window. This is more of a style choice to me, but whether you're shooting in tilt lock or FPV, that's something an action camera won't give you. Okay, let's get back to the SUV footage. I was out of town and I brought my Osmo Pocket last minute. Of course, when I decided to shoot, the battery was basically dead and I didn't bring my charger. And a storm decided to roll in. That's life. As I mentioned earlier, something unexpected happened that worked out great for this test, as you'll see. Actually, two things now that I think about it. I was driving along going about 50 when a radar speed sign popped up. So if you're doubting my speed, here's a close-up. That should be good enough. It's still not 80 yet, so I hit the gas. I was getting closer and finally hit 80 miles per hour. And then, boom. The battery died. The good thing about it though is the gimbal turned sideways. Well, that may not have been a good thing, but the filter stayed on. I was impressed. When I started this, I thought there was no way that filter would stay on doing 80 miles per hour. I wonder where they got that 35 mile per hour rating from. I kept driving for a bit and had no issues, and then finally I pulled over to check on the gimbal. The other thing you should know is the actual footage turned out great as well. The gimbal held up, and if you're filming with the Osmo Pocket attached to your car, 80 miles per hour should be plenty fast. One other thing I want to discuss is my thoughts about the filter. I did do a video, The Truth About ND Filters, which I'll link here if you want to watch how I work. But basically, if you're shooting in the middle of the day, you need an ND filter, unless you want crazy shutter speeds. Polar Pro is a good brand, and they do offer a few different choices. The one thing I find odd is you can get the Cinema Series, which is a 3-pack of ND4, ND8, and ND16. If you want anything more than an ND16, you either have to drop down to the Standard Series or bump up to the more expensive Cinematographer's Collection. I don't get why they don't have a Cinema Series with an ND32 and 64. They have it with the Standard Series, so what's up? That's a decision you'll have to make. And to make it more complicated, if I can only choose 3 filters, I would pick the ND8, ND16, and ND32. Decisions. I was also in Florida and spent the day at the beach. It was a semi-cloudy day, so the ND16 worked out pretty well. I had to adjust the shutter a few times to keep proper exposure. Anything brighter and you'd have to bump up to the ND32. Again, I was in tilt lock, and it's just simple to get some good, clean shots. It really is a fun camera to bring along, and sometimes the only camera I can have on me depending on what I'm doing. Maybe this video helped you to decide if you're debating between the Osmo Pocket or Osmo Action, or any action camera, or maybe it made your choice even more difficult. Sorry. They all do certain things well, but maybe the Osmo Pocket is all you need. Your call. Hope this video showed you the 35 mph speed rating for the Polar Pro filters. Seems to be more of a suggestion, but proceed at your own risk. Well, there you have it, the Osmo Pocket Polar Pro speed test. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button because there's definitely more on the way. Subscribe so you don't miss out. But until then, comment below and let me know how fast you think I would have to go to knock that filter off. And as for this episode, it's a wrap.